You're a disaffected liberal, is that fair to say?
I think that's extremely fair to say.
Why?
I was hoping you guys would tell me. You know what's great about you and I? We both look liberal and we both look visibly disaffected. There are decisions that I think every human being makes or comes to that are, in my internal Supreme Court, a 5-4 decision. I think that's the thing that people won't acknowledge.
Neal, we interviewed Bill Maher a couple of days ago, and one of the things we were saying to him is how much we respect the fact that he sticks to the ethos that we always thought was the ethos of comedy, which is you make fun of both sides. You don't go, oh, those guys over there that we hate, let's just bang on about how evil they are endlessly. But you actually make fun of both sides. And Blocks, your latest special, does that incredibly well. Is that something you were conscious of when you were doing that? Is that something that is kind of a thing that you think about? Or is it just something that comes naturally?
I think the jokes come involuntarily. And then I don't go, well, I'm going to be losing. I don't want to lose. Because I've realized something. The older I get, the more I realize, like, you never have the group anyway. Especially liberals. You never have them. There's no, the goalposts keep moving. So the purity test gets purer and purer. So there's no point in courting them because there's no loyalty. Now, having said that, I think there is more loyalty on the right, but I don't believe a lot. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't agree with I'm oriented to the left.
You're a disaffected liberal, is that fair to say?
I think that's extremely fair to say. Yeah.
No, I was going to say why.
I was hoping you guys would tell me. I think as I stated, there's not a ton of loyalty. It's all the old arguments, the circular firing squad, they'd rather attack, you know, an impure liberal than a just a super far right person. And there's blind spots that on both sides, and I think knowing more liberals than conservatives, they just blind to them, you know.
Yeah, that's the thing that I find frustrating. And as someone who would call themselves a disaffected liberal as well, that's the thing that I struggle with.
You know what's great about you and I? We both look liberal and we both look visibly disaffected.
Are you saying I've got right-wing vibes?
Well, the blazer's not doing you a ton of favors.
That is true. That is true. It's the centrist blazer. It drags me to the middle.
We just look sad, is what I'm trying to say. We look like we're waiting for the Blur concert to start.
Yeah, we do. We do. I think this is, you know what part of it is, Neal? I've got Irish heritage and I've got Latino heritage. And when you've got Irish, you get pale, you get sad. Doesn't matter what you mix it with.
You sure do.
And you drink.
And you drink. Oh, and then you stop drinking.
Thank you.
But it's interesting what you were saying, because it's the blind spots that I find frustrating. Not that you believe a certain thing, because if you believe a certain thing, then great, believe a certain thing, whatever it is. But it's the blind spots. I'm like, can you not see this?
Yeah, it's defensiveness isn't attractive on anybody, and especially ideological defensiveness. And so it's just this, it became, I think in the age of social media as well, people became more and more intractable in their points of view. And then it became, if they could dunk on you, then it was settled. And it's like, no, this is a fixed fight. This is a fixed fight. I have a term for it, which is a Putin karate tournament. You ever see Putin do karate? Seems fixed, doesn't it? Where he's just flipping people over and just like, so most of the internet is a Putin's karate tournament, and then everybody gets in their silos, and it's just a pure diet of confirmation bias, and it's I feel like it's kind of stopped a little bit, but it was heading hard in one direction for 13 years probably.
Yeah.
in my estimation.
And I think one of the reasons that I'm certainly disaffected is when I was, I don't know how old you are, I'm 40. When
I don't talk about it.
I wouldn't. When I was growing up, it was the religious right who all the comedians that I respected, Carl and Hicks, were making fun of.
Yep.
And the reason was those were the people who were saying, can't say that, can't do this,
Yes.
can't have this opinion, don't use that word. You know, Hicks's last Letterman monologue was censored. It was not published for over a decade, I think, because he made fun of religious people, right? So they were, quote unquote, the bad guys for comedians, for people who believe that expression is important, for people who believe in the ability to joke and take the piss, as we say, etc. And so the reason I'm disaffected is like, then it flipped. And now the people going, you can't say this, you can't do that, are like our team, if you like.
I think it's still the religious right and now the left also.
The religious left.
I don't even think it's, precisely. I have a Hicks observation. You'll meet no bigger Hicks fan than me. Saw him live.
Wow.
Introduced Dave Chappelle to Bill Hicks. Dave said he's never seen me more nervous. It was like 1992 or 3. That joke about American Gladiators, where he says, "Watch these pituitary retards." Pituitary is not a word. He meant pituitary, and it's a fucking tragedy that he said that in public. He just was misusing a word publicly. One of the smartest comedians ever. Neither here nor there. It is now. It's the thing where now the left is advocating not saying misgendering or what. You can't misgender people. That's just one example. And the right's still trying to ban books. So it's both sides to me that are both still doing all of the things that are easy to make fun of.
And they're
just banning different books. They're both banning different books, you know?
When you say banning books, what do you mean? Because I'm not across this
like
issue.
the on the right wanting to not in Florida getting rid of all the DEI curriculum and whatever. You can call it banning books, or you can call it they don't want that type of stuff published or taught.
Well, taught and published are very different things, right? Like banning something for, not reading Mein Kampf to 5-year-olds is not banning the book. It's how you decide what the education system teaches people, right?
Yeah.
So I that's what I always I'm not sure that they are banning books exactly, but I know what you mean.
You know what I mean, though. Like,
there's a desire for restriction and censorship on every side, particularly towards the extremes.
Yes.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But the thing that I find frustrating and worrying, actually, is a much better word, is things have kind of settled down now. They've kind of we hit a peak during the Trump years, and now they're starting to settle. People are starting to become less entrenched. There's a modicum of common sense being injected into the discourse. It's less insane. But then I look over the horizon and I see 2024, and I'm going, holy fuck, it's going to get bad again.
Heat up your hot takes, fellas, because we're going to need them. I think it will be insane. I think it will be less insane than it's been, because I think people thought that there was going to be some promised land of like, we'll just settle these arguments and I'll expend a ton of energy on arguing online and all this stuff, and then we'll all figure it out and we can go back to life as we knew it. And what they realized is the arguments were not settled, and all you can kind of do is like divest yourself a little bit of the intensity, and like, I just got to go on Twitter less, or just coming to like personal decisions of like, people now are saying, when they say I got into an argument on Twitter, it's with a sense of shame now, or a sense of exhaustion, and like, I can't fucking believe it. I did it again. Yeah. Whereas before it was like, I got into an argument. Can I show you? And it was more proud and righteous, and now it seems a little bit more exhausted.
Because I think more and more we're starting to understand, Neal, that actually social media isn't good for us. Whereas before, because it was so brand new.
I'm holding out hope. Oh, I want it. No, yeah, of course, it was brand new. We thought there was some bounty awaiting us if we won that argument. Like it would be settled, and it's just never going to be.
It's like all technology. It has, I mean, social media is fucking brilliant, and it's fucking terrible.
Yes.
That's what it is. And so, like many things, you know, we interviewed Tom Bilyeu from Impact Theory yesterday. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he said something that really, first of all, explained why we started the show, but also just gave a frame for how to think about these things. He was saying, I believe we need a creative tension between different sides on many issues, left and right and whatever else it might be.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, talking about the centrist blazer, like that's what I always thought. The left has some good ideas, the right has some good ideas. They both have some terrible ideas, particularly at the extremes. How do we kind of synthesize from different sides? But we have been pushed apart, and that center ground where the good stuff happens, that is less and less populated now. Would you agree?
The thing that on coming here I was thinking about, like, not like Neal, you need to decide who you are. This is a once and for all. There are decisions that I think every human being makes or comes to that are, in my internal Supreme Court, a 5-4 decision. There are no unanimous decisions. There are things where I am 53% for, 47% against, but I have to vote in favor of the 53. And I think that's the thing that people won't acknowledge.
Yeah.
Like that we are living, especially now, society's so transparent. Our lives are so transparent. It was easier before when we just didn't know anything.
Yeah.
I'm doing a joke where I'm like, it was better before documentaries because we could say stuff like, yeah, the whale wants to be at SeaWorld. Yeah. And then you go, then all these documentaries, there's footage of everything. Everyone's trackable. So now we know everyone's hypocrisies, including ourselves. So, and you guys probably know firsthand, the more aware you are, or if you grew up in the church or whatever, in Catholic church, like I did, like the more aware people are of their own hypocrisies, the more they'll cover it up and no, and shove it down. And so I'm kind of comfortable now just saying like, I'm a hypocrite, hypocrite in a lot of ways. And I'm happy to make fun of them. And, you know, even if you get down, like take abortion, for instance, if you get down to the core argument, it's like, when does life begin? That's a pretty fucking big question, huh? So that's like the heartbeat. Okay, how'd you come to that? Once you start asking follow-ups, so many arguments fall apart. And I think prior to social media and a transparent society, we were more comfortable just accepting like, yep, I'm pro-choice or I'm pro-life or whatever. And then you get into the specifics of anything and it's you just go, yeah, I'm this, but not by a ton.
And that's such a great point, because I think that's one of the problems of our age is the death of nuance. Like people wanting to pretend very complex, very serious issues are relatively simple. And you're like, come on, man. If it was relatively simple, wouldn't we have solved this? Wouldn't we have gone, oh, we just need to do this and then move on to the next thing?
Yeah. And I also, as a comedian, I know people with wildly divergent opinions, and always have. And are you funny? Are you nice? Great. It's like, I've been friends with Joe Rogan for 30 years. And sometimes people on the left will be like, how? And I'm like, 'cause he's fucking funny and nice.
Yeah.
And like has helped, like was nice to me when I was a doorman at a comedy club, had no reason to be other than just like, I like this guy, he likes him, whatever. He did Chappelle's show before it was popular. He's had me on his podcast a dozen times. Like I'm less apt to want to sort of dismiss or throw people away, because I know that everyone's opinion isn't. Maybe he's got a 55-45 opinion that we disagree. It's not a blowout. It's like that's where he ended up, and and I can accept it as a human being who has his own process to accept that other people ran their process and that's the decision they came to.
And also as well, if you're going to be one of those people who ditches people, which is a lovely way of putting it.
I would like to say I have ditched people. I don't want to say like I've never, I have.
Yeah, I mean.
And I kind of regret it.
Yeah.
Why did you, sorry, Francis, I think that's a good follow-up.
Yeah.
Why did you ditch people and why do you regret it?
Because when things are fevered during an election or during a big, Supreme Court decision or January 6th or whatever, you start to feel like these are like primal life and death.
Existential.
Yeah. And you start to go like, I must. There was also this thing of it felt like, or COVID, where we had to, if you believe this, then you believe all these other things that I can't countenance. I cannot accept that in you. And so I would make decisions, again, not a ton, and I can't even think of any specifics, but I know I have, so I want to cover myself. And that you feel like it's the noble thing to do. It's the noble for my ethics. Meanwhile, my ethics are fucking paper thin.
And why do you regret it?
Because it's childish. It's childish. It's just a childish way to approach, nothing. Well, not nothing is that important, but it speaks to a lack of maturity on my part.
And what it also doesn't acknowledge is how precious friendship is.
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, that's another big one where it's like I said about Joe. Joe's not even it's like, because they're not like, it's interesting in this sort of Scarlet Letter time of like, the thing that people, a value that totally got lost was loyalty.
Yeah.
The value of, like, no, I like this person. They've been kind to me. They've helped me. I can't now just immediately turn my back because whatever small infraction it is. And there's also that thing with the Me Too stuff where it's hard to know how to, you risk, if you defend somebody or even defend their right to like a fair hearing, right? Then you're anti the other side. Whether you're like, I believe this woman, well, are you saying that it's a rush to judgment about the guy? Okay. And if you say I stand with the guy's right to, then you hate all women.
I mean, we had this with the
when
vax.
He got me too.
Yeah, exactly. And I came out and we quashed it.
Not guilty.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, that's not exactly what they say.
Right,
no. Yeah, no, the lack of evidence. But but and also as well, just talking about how precious friendship is. We live in a world now where we're online more and more and more. Friendship, especially in real life, just seems to be receding. And what happened to? I mean, he's a bit of a dick about this, but he's a great guy.
I think computers, meaning I don't think that there's much. Who needs friends? I think it was an Onion article or somebody where it was people can't have 3-minute phone conversations but can listen to 2-hour podcasts. That's somehow that's easy, but like just getting on when someone calls you, you're like, what? Whereas you guys release a podcast, as we all know, and we're all waiting, we're hitting refresh. But seriously, like there is less of a in-person, it's not a product people want anymore. Like an in-person relationship is less necessary in the age of I can get my exact order delivered to my exact location and I don't get challenged in any way. I don't get sort of you don't get any human interaction. But one of the main ones is I don't get challenged. I don't get inconvenienced. I don't have to shower. I don't have to do all the stuff that's a bit of an inconvenience. I think our brains make it like a huge inconvenience. You just imagine it as way worse than it is. So I think there is a weird thing where it's a lack of, we feel like there's a lack of a necessity for friendship.
It's interesting you say that, because I know that I think podcasts show that the opposite is also true, but two things can be true at once, right? We have a mutual friend.
I don't agree. Go ahead.
We have a mutual friend where, like, I disagree with them a lot more than you do probably. And we have such a great time because that's interesting to me. Talking to interesting people who think about things in a complex way, who don't agree with me. And we talk for hours, and likewise with lots of other people. And I think the reason people enjoy podcasts is, we have people who watch our show who are like, we watched that episode and then I sat down with my husband and we talked about it for 2 hours.
Yeah.
There
is something to be said for, I believe a guy named Jonathan Solomon, a comedian in the 80s and 90s, did a joke about Cosmo magazine being the playbook of the enemy. And it was just like a good observation. Like women's magazines, like what are these crazy people thinking, right? There is something to be said for what is the other side think. It's also fun having a friend that is on the other side, so to speak, and you guys talk shit about your own side with each other.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh yeah, you're totally right about this. Like, what is that person thinking? So that's enjoyable, and also, it can be it's entertaining. Like, it's just, if somebody thinks that Hillary Clinton is a vampire or whatever, and they can show me a good joke about it, I don't think Hillary Clinton's a vampire. But if you do, I can see why that's funny, and therefore I can kind of get in. I think it's funny now.
Yeah.
Because part of it is I think your point of view is ridiculous, but this is a good illustration of it. Like, I love the Babylon Bee. I don't agree with them politically, but like, I've done their podcast. Like, comedically, those guys, I send those articles I send those links as much as any other comedy, other than The Onion. It's like 1 and 1A in terms of like, fucking look at this joke. This is a fucking good joke.
There is something really delicious about someone trashing your side or your beliefs. So I really enjoy, like when I was watching Blocks as a disaffected liberal, the joke about, you're a conservative, welcome. You go to a group of liberals, we'll see.
Yeah. Yes. That's maybe the worst telling of that joke.
I know. I was going to say, you fucking butchered it.
Please cut to a clip. I'm begging you. I'll clear it with Netflix. I'll call Ted Sarandos myself.
A conservative goes to a group of conservatives, they say, welcome.
Yeah.
A liberal goes to a group of liberals, they say, we'll see.
Yes, and yes.
And I also butchered it because we'll insert the clip.
Let's just insert the clip.
Now I'm afraid, I'm not even going to tell it because I'm afraid I'll fuck it up. Like, it's going to be contagiously. You're getting a.
You started this.
Yeah,
Yes.
I know. Neal's comedy is brilliant. It's much better than
It's much better than.
Slightly better.
Yeah.
The problem with being liberal is there's no amount of liberal that's ever liberal enough. Like, if there's a bunch of Republicans standing around and someone comes up and goes, hey, I'm a Republican, they go like, come on in. If there's a bunch of liberals standing around and a liberal comes up and goes, hey, I'm liberal, they're like, we'll see. You can believe the right shit as a liberal, but if you express it incorrectly, you're fucked. It's terrifying. You ever try to talk about like transgender issues in public? Even right now, you're like, we don't got to do this, Neal. Don't go out like your boy. Just move on. But that's exactly my point. It's terrifying. Like, I'm sure we all believe the right shit, but you try to talk about transgender issues in public is like playing conversational Jenga, where you're like, pronouns, he, they, and then Republicans are like, so trannies? We'll call them trannies. Yeah, there is no. I understand Gavin Newsom joke. Like, I get what, if I was not liberal, I would understand how loathsome people find Gavin Newsom or Nancy Pelosi or well, who was the corpse?
Biden.
The corpse who finally, no, that's the other corpse. Yeah, I've been doing a joke that we're either going to be led by Trump from jail or Biden from hospice. And that's just where we are as a country. Yeah, like admitting that Biden's fucking wildly old. You know what I mean? Like admitting that Barbara Box, it wasn't. Who was the lady who just died like a month ago?
Oh, Feinstein.
Feinstein, yeah, she wouldn't give it up. So admitting like, and not pretending it's in any way cool. I think you just go, yeah, Biden's a corpse, but I'm going to vote for him. Because I don't care what the president looks like or even how he walks. I need the votes. That's my point of view on it. I don't see it as like a leadership position, as like the optics on it. I just don't. That just doesn't speak to me.
And what does that say, Neal, about American society? Because you look at America, you've got all these great thinkers, you've got some of the best colleges in the world, you've got all these amazing people here, and you go, that's the best you can give me?
Yeah, it's funny because I think of like someone under 55 couldn't win because they have too much shit in public. You know what I mean? Like it's going to have to take that generation, like people over 60 to die, and then it'll be a bunch of candidates with dick pics and controversial old tweets, and it'll just have to be like a mutually assured destruction thing where it was kind of like when everyone knew Bush did coke, but there was, even with the media, they were kind of like, I think it's going to get to that point. I hope. Or I don't even know if I hope. I don't know if it's better. I'd say that's where we're going.
But we just got to run out of old people first.
Kind of, yeah. Or like people that believe in those sort of, or even Obama said he did coke. Like, so it just became this thing of like what's permissible for a candidate.
And what does this whole environment do for comedy? Is this like a really good time? Do you feel...
I think it's a good time. I don't... Look, even all my friends who have gotten canceled are doing arenas. So I'm not... I wouldn't cry for Chappelle or Rogan or Tom or any of these, like... or any of these guys are... All these guys are doing incredibly well. And the tension is fun to me. To me, it's fun. It's fun. It's like there's more lasers and you kind of have to, get around them in a cleverer way, than just kind of, or not, or you can just say whatever you want and deal with the backlash seems to be, I think the backlashers realize like this is useless and they're creating popularity for the people.
They're making stars. I suppose the one question I always think about is that's definitely true for you, and if someone wants to try and cancel us, it will be true for us. Is that true for a new comic who's sort of making their way up?
I mean, I think Shane Gillis is a good example of somebody who used the his cancellation as a jujitsu. And it's a springboard. Like, oh, you never heard of me? And I'm now the guy who did a offensive Chinese accent that every single human being alive has done. And then Chinese people have done a different accent. Chinese people have done Indian. And then everyone has their accent that they secretly do. So I see it as like, I don't worry about the next generation, because I don't think that there's much of I don't think it worked. I just don't think it was like I don't know if it totally backfired, but it's just, you're just creating, you just was a form of like, Star Search or something.
Well, this is what I say, in terms of cancel culture. The way to defeat it is to go, oh, you try to cancel somebody, well, they're bigger now, and then eventually, I mean, these people are quite slow, but eventually they'll work out this isn't what you do.
Yeah, I think, well, it hasn't happened since Dave Chappelle with the trans stuff. So I think, and they kind of, I don't know if anyone would consider that a success.
No,
No.
I don't think it was. No,
Dave probably does.
right. You go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, so could you make the Chappelle Show now on TV?
By the way, Chappelle Show is used to be a teacher.
Yeah.
Your used to be a teacher.
You really do watch Trigonometry.
It's going to come up.
Do you know he's from Venezuela?
I don't know what the fuck that has to do with anything.
He says it every other episode.
Oh, is that the other one?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
got it.
some.
Sorry.
I only have
My
two
mistake.
talking
He's not
points.
as big
Yeah.
a fan as we
Yeah.
thought.
No,
Yeah.
I know. You caught me.
That's our gotcha.
We'll be right back. I don't know. It's one of those things where I don't want to say like we couldn't do it today. I think it would be a bigger pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Because for all of as much as I say like cancel culture doesn't work, I would say it's taxing on a person's spirit. Whether you're Dave or Joe or Shane Gillis or whatever, you get through it, but it is like fuck. I think it's a bit of like a and that would have been. There was not much of the only barometer for like should we do this was personal. It wasn't there was no worry about so and so is gonna come down, and it was more just like is that a thing that's worth? Is that an idea that's worth promoting?
Yeah.
You know, there are some comics who say actually they like those lasers now being in place.
I agree. That's what I mean. I would say I'm one of those comics because it certainly like separates. I was gonna say men from the boys. Feels like you can't say that anymore. I don't even know why. I don't know why you can't say that anymore, but I don't think you can. It feels bad.
Yeah, it's because we're sitting in LA.
Yeah, there you go.
That's why. Do you ever feel like I know you get the sense of lasers, and that was so beautiful about Blocks, is that it felt like a comedian who was at the top of their game, tap dancing around the lasers. But do you ever, because we've spoken to people about this, and liberal comics as well, who say that it kind of influences their writing somewhat. Like they find themselves self-censoring, as opposed to a more overt, like you can't say that from person over there.
That's what I mean. It ends up being you even the cancel culture, the specter of it exists. It's not a ton of stuff that I'm like dying to say. There are some words that are not very acceptable anymore that I'm going to be honest with you, I miss. It
like
wasn't
retard.
Yeah, we all miss it.
It's a great word.
It's a great word.
Rogan has a great bit about this, how like people have lost, and this is something I wanted to talk to you about, which is people have lost their ability.
retards.
Retards have lost their ability to understand context. And his point is, when you've got somebody saying that to a 5-year-old mentally handicapped kid, that's fucking unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're saying it about a guy in his 40s who thinks the earth is flat, it's perfect.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that's part of it. That's why I missed it.
Yeah.
That's why I miss it. It's just an effective tool.
Yeah.
And it's so you just go, look at this neurodivergent motherfucker. You just have to it's Doug Stanhope used to do a bit about where it just moves on.
Yeah.
Because at one point, retard was the clean word. It was like the substitute word, and they just they just evolve. And so I miss it, but again, it's like, all right, I'll get another tool.
Yeah.
I'll say neurodivergent motherfucker, and everyone will hear retard.
Do you think the lasers make you better, make you more skilled? Now you're having to kind of bob and weave a little bit.
I don't know. Maybe. I will say tension helps comedy. So let's say it does make it more it makes it there's more tension. So if you can hit it right, that was the great thing. The jokes and blocks that I like doing was like most of my crowd is liberal. So like making fun of abortion and guns and the purity test and all that stuff and hearing them laugh it was like, okay, so I'm not alone in recognizing this. So I think the tension is useful overall in comedy. And it also brings, I have a theory that a few people have stolen, but there were these pillars of wisdom, or pillars of just kind of moral or societal pillars. Government. It's a good call. No,
Fucking big government.
No, but again, I'm talking about 100 years ago or 60 years ago. Government, clergy, and media. And you could even throw like business in there.
Yep.
And then they all got exposed through various means and fell. And then it became like, who's pretty wise is that George Carlin or that Jon Stewart or that or Dave or even like Michael Moore at a point or Chris Rock or guys that are and women that were Wanda and Sarah and like people that are smart. And so then comedians become the kind of pillars of they're de facto because everybody else fell. So, and our job is just to be funny. And like, I don't think Carlin was trying to be wise. He just kind of was. But we became the sort of de facto, weirdly kind of pillars of wisdom and morality. I don't think I'm wrong. It's absurd, right. It's absurd, but I think it's also maybe true.
Yeah. And that's kind of worrying as well. That is worrying because, look, I love comedy, biggest comedy fan. I'm a comedian. I don't know if I want a comedian to have that role in society.
Yeah, it's like Greg Fitzsimmons, a buddy of mine, comedian, and he started with Joe, and so we just talk about like when the White House is getting mad at Joe or CNN's talking about Joe. Fitzsimmons helped Joe steal his car stereo back from his ex-girlfriend. Like, just we all have these stories of like Dave Chappelle's a moral leader, and I'm like, I've got stories, but they're all personal stories. It's just this weird thing of like them. Okay, it speaks to the same thing about like what does it say about American politics that I'm willing to vote for a corpse. But now having said that, I don't think Joe and Dave are immoral or no. But I don't think
human.
They're human, and I think there is like there's a learning curve where I remember when Jon Stewart was being held up as like a lot of people were getting the news from him, and he was like, I'm on after fucking robots fighting each other. Like, I don't want to be, and like puppets making crank phone calls. I don't want to be the arbiter of information and morality, but nobody else is stepping up,
And I would argue that perhaps in some ways you could argue it's gone too far. And so, like Trevor Noah, for example, he does like lectures, right? He
what do you mean? In the world or on the show?
On the show.
Yes.
He will do a whole segment about a very contentious issue that people will see from different sides depending on where they are. There's not much humor in it quite often. And it's kind of like him it's like a political sort of speech. And I don't necessarily blame him for that. I think there's a demand for that.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. We've kind of got to a position where comedians were like thrust into this space.
Yeah. It's funny when there's a tragedy, shooting, 9/11. I think people remember Letterman's post 9/11 monologue and John's post 9/11 monologue more than Bush. More. It's like, why am I looking to Seth Meyers and Trevor for leadership? Again, these are guys that I know very well, and I'm like, I don't have like, again, I've got stories, and I don't mean that with Dave and Joey. It's just like they're very human, and they didn't move to New York or LA to like, I'm going to do some moral leadership.
Right.
Ma, pack my bag. It's like, it's just a weird, abdication on the part of all these other institutions.
And look, I understand these people are your friends and whatever, so this isn't me trying to get
No,
you.
I don't think you are.
No, I'm not. But I've got another question, which is a lot of people, particularly, there's a lot of people in the center right who would look at Trevor Noah and go, oh, he's not funny. I'm like, I used to watch his stand-up. He's fucking amazing.
Trevor's
fucking amazing.
Again, Trevor's really fucking funny.
However, if I mainly watch the moral lectures that I see retweeted on Twitter,
Yeah.
I would think he's not funny.
Sure.
Right? And what I wanted to ask you is, and feel free to answer any way you want. I'm not trying to lead you anywhere. I'm just curious. As an outside observer, watching these late night shows, it feels to me, disagree if you want, that they've lost teeth and they've lost humor. They're not as funny and they're not as biting and they're not as interesting to me.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
I know what you mean about you kind of know what the area that they're gonna talk about, what they're gonna say. It's fairly prescribed. I think it's a market decision in that it's the type of people who come to the taping. You have to do well.
Yeah.
If I would do the Daily Show sometimes. I wouldn't do that well because they weren't really my people, so to speak. So you've got the type of people who wanted to come to Seth's literally any Bill Maher's tapings. Like they come to hear a certain type of thing, right?
Well, sorry to interrupt. I want to hear the rest, but here's where I might disagree with what you're about to say, which is I think Bill, what he's done is he's actually shown leadership.
What's funny about Bill is he would bomb sometimes, and I saw it as a good thing, meaning like that means you're doing something right.
He changed his audience over time. That's what he did.
And
because he was like, I have principles.
Yeah.
I don't like what's happening with COVID eventually. I don't like this woke shit.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the audience with me.
Yep.
And I'm going to lose some on the way.
Yeah.
Right? But you're saying in these other shows that is more difficult.
I was going to say Bill would complain if he would get ooze sometimes. So it's like, I always saw it as good that he was getting ooze. I always thought like, dude, that's good that you're not. But that's the thing, like as comedians, you want to kill, right?
Yeah,
so,
sure.
Yeah, of course.
Some of us can't though.
It's always their fault now.
So it becomes this thing of how am I going to do well on tape, right? So then you're almost working backward from like, I tried this point of view yesterday, it got like nothing, right? So then or if you do a rehearsal, doesn't go well, then you're like, I don't want to say this because I'm just going to eat shit, right? So you've got to feed that, and then you just get in this feedback loop of you say that, it goes viral, feels good, and then you just get into that thing. Now, having said that, knowing all these people, none of them are changing their point of view to get likes or get virality. Like I can tell you, I've known Seth from before he hosted Update. I've known Trevor from before he hosted The Daily Show. Like they're not, Trevor's very naturally reconciliatory. Like it's just his natural. I always did a joke with him. He's like half black, half white, half man, half fish. Like he's just at half, like he is walking reconciliation. So I can understand why that it's frustrating or sort of kind of makes you roll your eyes a little bit, but I know where they're coming from. It's like Seth, I wrote for Seth on the Correspondents' Dinner. It wasn't, we made fun of, the tone hasn't changed very much, you know? We were one of the early making fun of Trumps, but so I don't think the tone, I don't think anyone's gotten the job and changed their tone very much.
It's interesting, yeah. And because you do see all of these guys, and again, as someone who is a disaffected liberal, I go, I would just like someone on the right as well to be on a show and have a little bit more teeth as well. And I'd like someone on the left to be like, you know what, you are nuts, and but talking about their own side. It would just be so refreshing. And actually, it would also make the shows more popular, and it would give them more relevancy, because I think that's what's happening now.
The more popular thing I can't speak to. Like I truly have no idea. I think what makes these shows popular is charisma and then celebrities. But I think Mar does it really well, and I watch Mar as religiously as any of these other shows. And then Greg Gutfeld has the Fox show that's apparently very popular and more popular than Colbert and all these other shows. So yeah, I don't know none of them are lying. And that's how I feel about Joe. Whenever someone talks about Rogan, I'm like, he is not doing this for attention. He literally is like, oh, I'm curious, or he really is just a guy talking, a guy experiencing the world and broadcasting it. And as someone who used to do it in his garage, it's the same thing. You guys said it last week. It's the same thing. There's just more security.
He's a lot more. But that I completely agree with you. You know, we did a 3.5-hour conversation this time with Joe, and then we went to see him at the club later that night, hang out in the green room. I mean, what he's talking about on stage is exactly the same stuff he was talking with us in the green room, and it's exactly the same thing that we talked about on the show. It's very authentic. But people try to read a lot into it. And I certainly wasn't saying that I think people are pretending to have opinions that they don't have. It just feels to me, maybe it's the disaffected, maybe I've got older and become less liberal, I don't know. But it just kind of feels a little bit lacking teeth for me.
I agree. They also have the advertiser thing. And again, none of them, I've never seen or spoken to any of them about, I need to worry about Procter & Gamble. But they are kind of there to get a rating. That's they have to get, or they will lose the job. But having said that, I don't think any of them are steering the wheel toward liberal hegemony.
We'll be back with our guest in a minute. But first, do you remember the Canadian trucker protest in 2022, where thousands of Canadians came out to protest COVID restrictions and vaccine mandates?
Now, these protests lasted for weeks, and the people out on the streets needed funds, as any grassroots protest would. So people set up online crowdfunding campaigns, which raised millions of dollars. Incredible! But once the Canadian authorities had started to criticise the crowdfunding platforms, ramping up pressure to close the campaigns, it didn't take long for the biggest crowdfunding platform, the one we've all heard of, to completely capitulate and shut the campaigns down.
Now, this is where our partners GiveSendGo come in. They stepped in when the other platforms backed off and raised millions of dollars for the truckers. When they were criticized and dragged through the Canadian courts, GiveSendGo said it respected diverse views and believed hope and freedom are values worth fighting for. This is why we're proud to partner with GiveSendGo.
So, if you need to crowdfund for whatever means the most to you, then don't go to the big tech platforms. We recommend you do it on GiveSendGo.
Starting a campaign on GiveSendGo is easy and intuitive. Go to GiveSendGo.com today. That's GiveSendGo.com to start raising money for whatever is important to you.
And now, back to the interview.
And are you excited creatively?
No.
Yeah, you don't look it. I've never seen you look excited. Are you excited creatively? Because it is a good time for people like you to play with the tension that comedians always play with. What are you looking to create? Obviously, stand-up specials. What things are you thinking about?
The only things that the only thing I'm looking to create is just more material. That my only like prayer creatively is a rich harvest. I just want ideas and I want jokes, but having worked on Chappelle's Show for 3 years, it's so hard that I don't. And I help Trevor out on The Daily Show every once in a while. And it's just, I don't like the lifestyle. It's like very much like an office job. So, whereas this is a house job. Yeah, like I also think that stand-up is the coolest thing a person can do. I just do and that's having done a great TV show. I still, the Chappelle Show was good because it was so stand-up-y to me. But the idea of having to go to an office 40 weeks a year and like backpack and the job of going and talking is so cool, and having no editor other than yourself and the audience is such a guys, I'd say this, it's a blessing. Hashtag blessed. No, it is. It's just an incredibly cool job.
I think the thing which stand-up gives you, and you see with a lot of these guys, it's a freedom. You're not answerable to anyone. You just go out there, you've got your audience, you do your material that you believe in, that you've worked on, and that you will present. And then it will rise or it will fall on its own merits.
Yeah. And it's if it's good, it lasts a long time. You know, Bill Burr said to Seinfeld on Comedians in Cars, he was like, "You've ruined so many things for me." Meaning if like Jerry, for instance, or Burr is another good example, or Patrice O'Neill, are guys that like, once you hear something a certain way, it changes your perception of that thing forever. You know, like Patrice O'Neill has a bunch of sexual harassment jokes that are like definitive. And it changed my mind or it certainly locked my mind in. Or Burr has a bunch of those, or Dave or Chris, or just, there are people that can make definitive things. I just like it better myself. I watch pretty much every stand-up special, and I watch no sitcoms, and I just never really have. I just don't enjoy them that much. I like sketch shows. I like late night and stand-up.
Why don't you like sitcoms? Do you find it contrived?
I just find it, and I said this to Jerry on Comedians in Cars, like they just seem to be like, every time I turned on, they were worried about a jacket. Like, where's the jacket? It was always just like, what they're worried about, and we got to go over here. It doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just doesn't, like, that genre doesn't work very well.
Have you seen Peep Show?
No. I'm guessing you have.
Yes.
No, Seth Meyers told me about Peep Show he's been telling me for 20 years about Peep Show. I've heard. No, I believe it.
British sitcoms are good.
Much better than American.
Whenever I see clips, I'm like, that's fucking funny.
Yeah.
But I don't like I like bite-sized things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, which is absolutely fair enough. So who are the comedians for you that influence you, Neal, that you looked at, and when you were coming up, you were like, oh my God, if I could be half as good as them.
Hicks, obviously, as mentioned. Dave Attell, Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock. Brian Regan doesn't get enough credit. He's an amazing American comedian. And then Burr, Patrice, I'd say currently like Mulaney, I think is excellent. Wanda, I think Sarah Silverman's like been because I kind of I met her when I was 15 or something, so I never really, and then a couple of years ago I was like, she's fucking really good. And then like Rodney, kind of like the one-liner like Rodney, Joan Rivers, that sort of like, did you guys see the Joan Rivers documentary?
No.
There's a documentary about her where you watch it and you go, oh, I will never say a bad, like, has index card, like libraries full of jokes that she's collected and written for 50 years. Like, people that work hard are, like, that's a different category, but it's still, it's a big, it means, it's like, it's a hard job. Like, you have to really grind at it. So, and I'm sure I'm forgetting 15 people. But.
Of course you are. You always are when you talk about the greats.
Hey, watch your tone.
And what was Hicks like, by the way, to work with him?
I just met him once. Yeah. So he was just kind of like after a show. Yeah. The interesting thing about it is it was at a club in New York, and it was he was there for the weekend, Thursday through Sunday. And I went to the Sunday show, and it was like 2/3 empty.
Wow.
And this is 6 months before he died. So this thing, he was big in the UK, but he was still like largely unknown in the States.
Yeah, you can't be a prophet in your own homeland, as they say.
Correct, as they say.
As they say. Yeah.
But Neal?
It's been a pleasure.
Great.
We're
This
gonna
is
go
totally painless.
Well, you know what? Before we go to locals,
Inflict some pain.
Yeah.
why do you watch Trigonometry? Or listen to it? Do you watch or listen?
It's hard to watch. Because I like heterodox ideology. I like hearing the opposite argument for a thing that I've just eaten up. Like, I enjoyed like Douglas Murray books. I like seeing somebody. I like watching McWhorter bomb. It's fun. It's meaning I respect it. McWhorter's not, but I mean, generally Douglas Murray and John McWhorter go to places where they don't bomb. But they're not doing themselves any favors. They're not towing the company line, and it feels more honest, like a podcast like this. It is truly like you're willing to discuss things that someone's like, that's a controversial topic. Life's controversial. The whole thing is controversial. So the fact that I'm supposed to pick a side and never question it or talk about it is insulting. So I enjoy hearing even in opposite points of view. I just like that you guys are willing to talk about it and have people talk about stuff and you are disaffected liberals. Like you are, it's one of you more than the other, as we established. But like I can relate to that point and I don't mind. It's I don't know who it is, Aristotle or somebody like that. It's the sign of a advanced mind that you can entertain two ideas at once. I'm butchering it like you guys butchered my comment, but at least he's dead, so he doesn't have to be here to watch it. But
I mean, we did butcher that.
well,
so
yeah,
much.
yeah.
The thing is,
Fucking-
I thought I was going to
and as
help
a-
out, but I actually realized as I was
you
saying that
made
I
the same mistake.
No,
You're
my
making it
mistake
worse.
was slightly smaller.
Yes.
But the fact that I also made a mistake made it much worse.
I mean, that's basically the show as well. Is that I fuck it up.
Yeah.
He tries to
Yes.
help, and then
it's just as bad.
Just as bad
in
a different way.
Yeah. So I like I basically feel like you said, like, do you think we're pretty? Why? Why do you watch our podcast? Because I like hearing opposite points of view, and it feels like a way of thumbing my nose up at more entrenched liberals.
You know, I didn't ask you that question, although it's going to make a fucking great clip to promote Trigonometry,
Yeah.
right? Obviously. But I asked you that question because I think you are exactly the sort of person that we're trying to reach when we do what we do, which is somebody who understands that the world is complex. And it's not just about reaching people like you, because you're there without us, really. But there are lots of people who maybe their feed, whatever is they're being fed, isn't feeding them a nuanced conversation. It's feeding them, bumper stickers, right? And all we're trying to do is take the bumper sticker and get some interesting people and go, why don't we just zoom out a little bit and go, what else is there? Why is this thing controversial? Why are people disagreeing about it? Because by definition, controversial issues are issues on which many people have a different opinion. And that's because people's psychology is different, their genetics are different, their life experiences are different, all sorts of things. Their cultures are different, and that's why they need to be talked about in a sensible way. So genuinely gratifying to me to hear you answer that.
Yeah, and it's funny, me and Jimmy Carr would send each other maybe like a Douglas Murray clip or like a Jordan Peterson clip. Again, Jordan Peterson, I'm still trying to find the controversy. I'm like, what? I still don't understand the problem.
Look at his Twitter.
Well, yeah, I've heard he's got, but
No, I agree.
you know what I mean?
He's
Like,
he's making
Tempest
very
and
good and
Teapot
very
are- yeah.
important points.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, how dare he tell boys to make their bed? The but like we would send each other clips, and it felt like we were sending each other like Red Fox records or something, or like dirty, filthy blue comedy. It's like blue ideology, and it's just a little bit heterodox, or like, I don't know, maybe also this. I've also accepted a long time ago that like, if this many people are conservative, there must be something to it. Like, I can see where, like, I can't just go, they're all out of their minds. I'm assuming that it comes from a genuine place. I love those studies where they'll show, like, they're more psychological studies where, like, conservative people are more averse to watching people vomit. Have you seen those things where it's like these weird psychological links between conservatives and liberals? And like, I do think it's that deep. I really do.
Oh,
like,
it is.
It is.
And it's you can't even. I think they'll be able to tell like in utero who's going to be conservative.
I mean, it's one of the interesting things about this idea that your political opinions determine whether you are a moral person or not. Right. I mean, obviously at the extremes, that is true to some extent, but it's like 50% of your political views are predetermined by your genetics.
Yeah.
So go, oh, you think like this, that's because you've chosen to be a bad.
No.
Yeah.
Not really
also,
like that.
We're not choosing almost any of this stuff.
No.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, as Sam Harris doesn't even believe like we don't make any decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have some issues with
I
that.
do too, but I'm just saying, it's like, okay, I see how you came to that.
Yeah.
No, but you're right. I mean, conservatives, they crave order. They have a much lower disgust threshold. The disgust thing drives them a lot more. It's why they find certain things. They can be much more hardline about things because of that, because it's like that.
Yeah.
And liberals, they crave, openness and
Freedom.
compassion.
Right.
And much of what we're seeing, I feel, is like compassion, but that's been weaponized and it's just gone out of control.
And it's also, I always see it as like compassion without limits. And it's like, there's gotta be some, like, whenever people bring up immigration, I go, how many people should we let in? What's your number? And no one ever asks that. You just go, no, what's the right amount? What to you is the right amount? And there's dishonesty on both sides where it's like, we can't have any. And it's like, well, then the fucking economy is gonna dry up if we don't have any. Or we have as many, all you can eat, which they're both bad policies.
Yeah.
So, but I will say I don't think there's very many of me. So don't get your hopes up in terms of people that I'm a pain in the ass. Like I've been a pain in the ass.
That's why we like
Yeah.
it.
Right. No, but I'm saying that makes me a good comedian, but I don't think there's a lot of people that are, like when you guys like you're hoping to get people like me. I don't know that there are many. Again, I could be wrong, but I think that there are more people that are hopefully, and maybe there will be, maybe there won't be, but more people willing to question things. Be like, like, let me watch some Jordan Peterson and see if there's an issue here. And then you watch him and go, I don't see an issue, whatever. So, but I don't think most people are willing to, and they don't have the time because I don't have a wife or kids, so I got fucking endless time. But it's people are busy and they are more willing to just go, what opinion am I supposed to have? Fine, I'll just put that name tag on and not question it because I don't have. My wife's gonna yell at me if I watch too many videos.
I mean, it's very true. Neal, what a pleasure. Final question as always. What's the one thing we're not talking about that we really should be?
Bed bugs. No, I'm kidding. I would say it's the decision-making process that we all are going through, which is like, we can have split decisions or have mild majorities. I have mild majorities about pretty much everything. And I wish people would stop pretending that everything is 100% held belief. I just think it's dishonest.
You're going to have to leave LA in order to get that, Neal.
Oh well, then I'm gonna have to live with it because I love this city. No, yeah, I'm with you, but I think it doesn't require a ton of bravery. It's just a matter of like, or just assume it about most people instead of it. It also makes arguing with people more humane, and you don't sort of brand them immediately as like a zealot. Like, I'm not a zealot about too much. I can be persuaded to believe anything. I kind of believe that though. Like I'm not I think assuming zealotry from other people is and you hate to bring up Israel, but it's a good example of like, whoever the last person to talk to me is, I'm on their side. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, yes, it was an occupation. Nope, that was wrong. And like just going back and forth and not knowing. I don't know. For most issues, the more you investigate it, the more confused.
The less convinced you are.
Yeah.
Finally, you've gotten my material. Yeah, the more you investigate something, the more confused you become.
Yeah, there's a great Paul Weller lyric which goes, "The more I know, the less I understand." I kind of nailed it on that.
Yeah. Neal, you know what? I always say this because it's my job, but I really do mean it. It's been an absolute pleasure of a conversation.
Great.
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing what our fans want to ask of you on Locals, which is where we're going to go next. So head on over there and we'll continue the conversation.